Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Cast. I'm one of the HCS commentators, analysts, and content creators, and we have another HCS report where today we're going to be answering the question, how were Faze able to win London? Let's talk about it. All right, guys, so in order for us to properly answer the question on how Faze were able to win London, we have to take you back. We got to go all the way back to Arlington, the first tournament of the year, and talk about their performance and talk about how things went at Arlington before we can get to London and compare and talk about how they were able to win, because there was some major differences of what went down back at Arlington and what ended up going down at London. So let's take you back real quick, back at HCS Arlington, where Faze finished out third place. We're going to fast forward a bit over towards that bracket play and go all the way to the upper bracket semifinals. Faze, a team fresh off of winning Worlds, only making it to the winners bracket semifinals, a team that is much more used to making it to that winners bracket finals and making it to the grand finals through winners bracket, had to drop down a bit earlier than expected. Snakebite, Roll 2. Must be allergic to Roll 2. Frosty and Renegade getting 3-0'd by Optic. Let's talk about that matchup a little bit here, where we see that Optic 3-0. We see some decent stats across the board. Obviously, Lucid having a damn good series and a damn good tournament. We're going to talk about Lucid a little bit more towards the end of this video, but Lucid doing his thing. Renegade, not bad in the damage department, at least in this matchup, but at the end of the day, it was a losing effort. So, you know, I don't know how much flowers we can give to him as far as what he was able to produce when you ultimately didn't win the game. I mean, in fact, he didn't win the series. He didn't win a single game. Did Faze here as they got 3-0'd by Optic and sent down to the lower bracket. Matchups 200-131 and Oddball. Optic have been a phenomenal Oddball team all year long. They've been doing their thing at Oddball, have been probably the best Oddball team all year. Excuse me, not just phenomenal, the best. Slayer Streets, which we're going to talk about this matchup a little bit later, because this rears its ugly head, or beautiful head, over towards their London matchup. So keep that in the back of your mind. Slayer Streets is going to be important, but that was a 50-39 in favor of Optic. And then Strongholds Recharge, Faze getting blown out 250-56 is not a close matchup, but we know how setup heavy and how Snowball Recharge can be based on you just having good fundamentals and not getting broken. Optic, they held control. They never let it go. That led to a 3-0 in favor of Optic. Now we go back and we see in their lower bracket, well, you met them once in the winners bracket. You're gonna meet them again in the lower bracket finals, this time to find out who makes it to the grand finals, where once again, Faze gets swept. Once again, Faze get swept. Slays, decently close. In fact, Faze somehow even ended up with more assists than Optic. Pretty impressive if you think about that. But meanwhile, a quiet day as far as kills for Formal, but gotta love the assist and decent damage on top of that. Across the board, you know, fairly even as far as Slays, but again, it's really tough when it's ultimately really tough when you're losing. Like, I want to give flowers, but getting 3-0'd is not what you want to see and not what they wanted to see. And also ended up in third place because of it. They just couldn't win a game against Optic in Optic's hometown in Arlington. Matchup 2-1 King of Dale Solitude, very close. Slayer Aquarius, very close. Keep this forbidden flag in your mind, because the same way that Slayer Street showed up is the same way that Forbidden captured a flag did as well, and a very close matchup that I believe even went to overtime with Optic winning it 3-2. We'll talk about this in a little bit. So again, that leads to Faze, fresh off of winning a world championship, first tournament of the year, third place, and a lot left on the table back at Arlington. Now again, obviously Obviously, this video is going to be talking more about London, but you can't know where you're going till you know where you've been. So we had to set up the stage for that. And then we'll even do it one more time with, again, the stage showing that Optic has Faze's number. They continue to have their number. Scrims leading up to the event, 12-1 was one of the scrims in favor of Optic. This is not close. And now, obviously, people are going to come at me and say, hey, Faze, this scrim isn't where people want to try different strategies. It's obviously different when it comes to tournament play. I understand some, but what I will say, I will push back on this here is you can't put everything into scrims, but you can't put nothing into scrims. Scrims will show you how teams are looking leading up to an event, and at least in one of these scrims, Faze did not look very good against their rivals in Optic Gaming. But then things changed up a little bit. Because we get over to London, and let me tell you, this Faze roster, we're looking a bit different. Because remember when we got knocked down from the winners bracket semifinals, did Faze over toward that lower bracket, courtesy of Optic Gaming, this time get to the winners bracket semifinals and Faze 3-0 Optic. And one thing you're going to recognize is that two of the game type and map combinations that were literally played at Arlington were again in this series. And again, Optic won those two, didn't capture the flag, and Slayer Streets. And that's what literally started two of the first 3 games for Optic. Everything was set up for Optic to win it. The 2 map and game mode combinations that you already beat them in, you got them again. Let's talk about it. First, we'll talk about that capture the flag and what was the difference maker. So back at Arlington, it was 3-2 in favor of Optic, and it was crazy. Lucid had an amazing game. 27 kills, 8,000 damage, doing his thing. Same thing with Trippy, doing his thing. You gotta love what you see here. Goes all the way, 16 minutes, goes all the way into overtime. And as far as, even though Faze were able to somehow outslay Optic, for me, it was the objective efficiency that you saw that Optic played with, and that ultimately kept them close into that overtime, and then eventually led to a cap to finish off the game. It was a grind in where Optic were able to come out with the win in a very, very close one, 16 minutes, in order to end it in 1 cap in overtime. Meanwhile, another 3-2 result back in London, very similar to Arlington, but a much different winner. Because this time it was Faze, and instead of having to go the full 16 minutes and using up overtime in order to get there, it took less than 9 minutes for Faze to ultimately win this game in the same score line that Optic did. And for me, the main difference maker was, obviously, Lucid and Trippy didn't have that crazy slay out game, but they didn't have the time to. Who did have a crazy slay out game is Renegade. 18 kills in literally less than 9 minutes. We're on the opposite side of things, 24 kills in 16 minutes. He literally almost matched his kills in London in almost half the time than he did back at Arlington, and was by far the most dominant player on the map. Renegade was different in this matchup, and that was the reason why Faze were able to win at least this game. Let's switch it up, because again, Slayer Streets, we know that Optic won this back at Arlington. What was the difference maker? 50-39 in favor of Optic Gaming. Another standout performance by Lucid. 19 kills in a Slayer is crazy. I mean, this man was almost outslaying half of Faze by himself. That's how crazy it was. You know, World 2 and Snakebite combining for 19 kills. Lucid had 19. Frosty and Renegade combining for 20 kills. Well, Lucid 1 kill behind him. It just tells you the difference maker that Lucid was during this slay. And we said the same thing with that capture the flag game on Forbidden. Same thing for that capture the flag game on Forbidden. Lucid was crazy and had an amazing tournament. But now let's flip it. Because almost the exact same scoreline, only 1 kill being the difference maker here, was Faze winning the same exact game type and map combination against Optic Gaming, but this time Faze come out with the win. And two things stood out to me personally. Number one, Snakebite's consistency when it comes to the big games. 13 kills leading the squad in a losing effort. You know, it's hard to give a player, you know, crazy amount of flowers, but still, it's pretty impressive. 13 kills in that losing Slayer, a very important one. Then again, we're going to talk about Renegade. 14 kills, only dying 10 times, 4,850 damage. Now, yes, he had less damage than he did back at Arlington, but let's see how he was able to get that. 10 kills, dying 17 times. 9 assists, very good. I don't want to take that away from him. So, yes, he got less damage back in London, but dying 17 times in a Slayer. If everybody dies 17 times in a Slayer, you lost the game by 10. You know, you have to find a way to keep your deaths to about 11 or lower. So, what Renegade needed to do, he did. He simply did it. And it was, he needed to lower his deaths. He needed to have a decent amount of output as far as the kills, a decent amount of output as far as the damage, but he needed to keep his deaths low. One thing we noticed for about two of these matches is, number one, Snakebite consistently was trying to keep Faze in it, going up against Optic, which I didn't highlight that enough in the beginning of the video. I want to highlight that again. Snakebite did what Faze needed him to do in every single game. If he needed to play more objective, he was leading as far as the objective. When they needed to be that main damage dealer in that Slayer, he was doing that all tournament long back at Arlington. The problem is, when FaZe desperately needed Snakebite to be that slaying power, be that main damage dealer, they weren't in a good position. They're not. FaZe are at their best when it's more of a balanced attack, but when it's leaning more towards World 2, Renegade, and Frosty when it comes to that firepower. Snakebite's gonna do what you need him to do. But they needed Renegade, Frosty, and World 2 to step it up. And they did, and still, a damn big 15 kills, by the way, only died 9 times. Ain't nothing to look over. Snakebite still having a very good Slayer going into London. But what was most impressive to me is that you ran into 2 map and game mode combinations that you got 3-0'd in back at Arlington. That tells me the chips were stacked against you. FaZe had to step up, and yet still they were able to 3-0 Optic and knock him down to the lower bracket. And one thing we have learned is, whenever these two match up, it ain't gonna be the only time they do. FaZe and Optic match up again, this time in the grand finals, and this time it's FaZe coming out with the 4-2. And damn. I mean, Slays looking very good. Optic winning the assist battle, but Slays and damage heavily in favor of FaZe throughout 6 games, excuse me. Formal, very good. Kills, great. Assist, great. Damage, looking amazing. But on the other side of things, Renegade Renegade played like the best player in the world when playing against FaZe. And honestly, I've ever played against Optic, and honestly, the rest of the tournament. So at all times when you watch Renegade, even if you take the stats out of it, the eyeball test, you were looking the way Renegade was playing, like, oh shit. That man's feeling himself. That's the best player in the world right there. Renegade, he talked the talk, but he walked the walk as well. And it showed in the stats. It showed in the stats too. 113 kills, 45 assists, 35,000 damage between only 6 games is amazing out of Renegade. Want to give it to Formal doing his thing. You know, at Arlington it was Lucid, but this time it was definitely Formal, and eventually I think the best player would have to be Renegade in that entire tournament. I think Renegade propelled himself as the best player in Halo Infinite, at least as of right now. Atlanta's still around the corner. So going into Atlanta, FaZe now are going to defend, FaZe are now going to defend their championship with that hometown advantage. And it makes us, kind of bring up the question, how were FaZe able to win London? You went from 3rd place at Arlington to ultimately 1st place in London. And it was a huge change. To me, it was a few things. Number one, you already know what World 2 is going to bring to the table. High amount of kills, low deaths. He's going to play almost a support role covering his teammates back, but he looks good while doing it. World 2's consistency, very good. He might have quiet games here and there, but as far as look at the stats in the tournament, overall, they're going to be incredible. Love what World 2 brings to the table. For me, Snakebite's consistency. He went into Arlington and did what he had to do. Whatever the team needed him to do as far as kills, damage, whatever it was, he did it. And he continued that same trend back at London. He had some big games and big moments, which he did in Arlington. It just didn't win them. Still being very efficient with the objective, still doing everything that he needs to do. He's a true professional. If you want to know what it takes to be a professional in the scene, you should look up to Snakebite and the way that he approaches it. Number three, I think Frosty had a big bounce back tournament. Frosty was very good. Incredible. Arlington, a bit quiet at times, but I think that was a big bounce back for London. But to me, the biggest reason why Faze were able to win London was on top of the rest of the three things that I mentioned, but it was that Renegade put himself as the best player in the world once again. If you watched that tournament, you watched Renegade and you said, damn, if he plays like this every single event, Faze do not lose. The rest of the league has its work cut out. If Renegade's gonna play at Atlanta with the hometown with the hometown crowd behind his back, the way that he played in London, watch out the rest of the league, because Faze may just look just as dominant as they did toward the tail end of season 2 and this time in the beginning of season 3. Renegade right now is the best player in the world. And it's up to somebody else to take that away from him. All right, guys, that's your HCS report. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys agree with me, or if you guys think that maybe it was a little bit of something different. Let me know. I'm always up for a little bit of discussion. Maybe we'll bring it up on the next video. If you're in, like I said, YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comments down below. Let me know. And yeah, we'll have a good time. Twitch, if you guys are live, let's talk about it. Do you agree? Or do you disagree? What do you think was the main reason why Faze were able to win at London? And we'll be back with another video probably tomorrow or the next day with some more prep leading into Atlanta. You guys are going to want to make sure you have the sub button on, notifications bell turned on, because we're about to turn up the content on the road to Atlanta. All right, peace.